So, welcome back from the break. I hope that you had a moment to take care of yourself, your body, your mind, your spirits, your home, your animals, whatever needed to happen. And I will be starting us off with a little bit about vulnerability as we kind of open our conversations. And this is going to be less of a talk and more of a quick introduction and then a practice that I find extremely helpful in tapping into my own sense of vulnerability and my sense of what am I orienting my life toward? What am I orienting my practice toward? And what do I need from others, from the community, from the land? And so maybe I'll start off by just sharing a little bit more about me and why this practice resonates as a way to kind of ground us in hopefully what you might be able to gather from it. So, we've talked a bit about strategy as a word and strategy as a concept. There's a little bit more there for me because my day to day life is structured around an identity, a professional identity wherein I am a strategist. And so my job and my role at the highest level is to help leaders and organizations to reflect on their highest aspiration for what they want to bring into the world and who they want to be, and then to build the causes and conditions for them to actually succeed in moving down that path, communicating their intentions, and then helping to garner support from the rest of an organization or other people around them. So I oftentimes like to joke that I'm a CEO whisperer in some ways. It is very much a heart and head collaboration. It is a lot of trying to bring together not simply the aspiration of what do I want to do, but also how do I do this very difficult thing that seems well beyond my capability, right? And part of that is connecting people to the need for being continually reminded and connected to community. And so that vulnerability is being able to say, in the face of wanting to do something great and wanting to achieve something that feels almost immeasurable, and sometimes, as Zahra was saying, is something that we understand is intergenerational, that we will need to set the foundation for and recognize other people will be able to accomplish this with us later down the line. How do we do that, right? Especially within institutions where we have like measurable things that we have to get done. So I wanted to share a practice that was shared with me by multiple people as I have learned different practices to really acknowledge my own purpose. Um, and so to name a few of those people who have reinforced this with me, I can think of Lapsang Tempa, who is a very close confidant and a person who has offered this to me. Dr. Alan Wallace is a mentor and a practitioner and a scholar who has shared this practice. And so much of this is in the iterative fashion of what he has shared. And then Dr. Eve Ekman, who has also been a very gracious component of grounding this practice in a community context. But what I want to offer up is something that's called a vision quest, or we can refer to it as an imaginative visioning quest for ourselves. So and we can have a space of kind of talking about that a bit more, but this is a practice that will run for a little over 20 minutes. It will very similarly offer up a space where you can take and find a comfortable position. So feel free to start adjusting yourself into a space where you feel comfortable and confident, and you are taking care of your physical needs. And so this practice is meant to really understand and envision a clear path from where we are today to where you might imagine yourself fully realizing your highest purpose. And so it helps to form a sense of the path that it takes to get there, being realistic, really. That as time goes on, your plans can change. Everything is mutable and adaptable. And that these take shape with what you have in front of you and what you want and what you need. And so that vulnerability is really structured around flexibility and fluidity and the potential to meet change and with adaptation and adaptability as well. So I also want to name that this is a practice that we are offering and centering Black and Indigenous people and those who are identifying as people of color, knowing the myriad of complexities of what it looks like for us to imagine ourselves beyond a space of oppression or a space of lack and scarcity, and really allow us the opportunity to take a few moments to just think of the interconnected nature of our desires and our needs, and then what we want to offer as well. So let's begin by setting the motivation to be fully present with ourselves as we aspire for the inevitable benefit that this practice will bring, not simply to us, but to all living beings. And I invite you to find a posture as comfortable and stable as is possible for you in this moment. Ideally, a posture where you can be kind to your body and maintain a level of both deep relaxation and of attention. And so, breathing in your own normal way, begin to settle your body, your speech, and your mind into a state of relaxation, stability, and clarity. And invite a sense of stillness in your body that reflects your own inherent dignity and power. So, in an effort to offer ourselves the most profound love and kindness, as you consider the questions offered in this practice, feel free to let go of any desire to look for your answers in the past or in projections of the future. Really give yourself permission to be fully of this moment and stay true to what is unique and present and arising for you right now. So we might begin by asking ourselves and inviting this question that in this moment, what is my vision of genuine happiness? What would truly bring me satisfaction and a deep sense of meaning? And in another way, what is my vision of my own flourishing? And how must I develop my mind, my actions, and my body in accordance with that growth? So just take a few minutes to reflect on that for yourself. As you're reflecting, if you're noticing that there's any tension arising in your body, just notice it and try to bring a sense of relaxation and ease. Bringing yourself back to this imaginative vision of your own unique, genuine happiness. For those of you familiar with loving kindness meditation, this meditation is an adaptation of loving kindness. So holding this vision for your genuine happiness and well-being in mind, arouse the aspiration of kindness for yourself, bearing in mind that kindness, as we evoke it in this context, is not simply an emotion or a feeling, but it's a genuine aspiration and something that you can bring into your continued practice. And if it's comfortable for you in this moment, wish yourself well. This is not an easy practice. Consciously arouse the aspiration. As part of my well-being, may I be healthy, may I be safe, may I find this vision of genuine happiness. And so in this and in every moment, when we feel the pressure of external and internal limitations, it's important to remember that we still have unmitigated access to our own imaginative vision. And in this, we can be brave and we can venture boldly into this realm of possibilities, what's possible for us. So take advantage of that visioning. Breathing in your own normal pace, I invite you to, with each out breath, give yourself the space to experience happiness and fulfillment in relationship to your innermost desire. However you imagine thriving might look for you and feel right now. So now I invite you to let that vision dissolve into your present awareness and shift a bit to observe that with that vision of genuine well-being and happiness, with that understanding of your own desire for well-being, that there's no possible way for any of us to realize our deepest aspiration without the help of those around us, especially now with everything going on around us. It is more present than ever that we are absolutely interdependent, completely. And it's not possible to manifest the fullness of our aspirations completely on our own. So it raises the second question, and that is, in order to realize my greatest well-being, what would I love to receive from the world around me? In the short term and the long term, what would I wish from those who are near and far to assist me on my path? What would I love to receive from the world? Here again, with each inhalation, I invite you, if the breath is a stabilizing feature, to arouse the aspiration that which you would love to receive from the world can manifest. And the aspiration that whatever you truly need, moment to moment, day to day, to take you to the next step in your journey, whatever that might be, that the love and the kindness of others will rise up to meet you, and that you can and will receive all you need from the world. Imagine this symbolically as the kindness of all beings, wishing you the material aspects of what you need so that you can realize your goal of ultimate and genuine happiness. And I invite you to let your imagination play. So imagine here and now receiving all that you truly need. Finding grounding in the breath, if that's comfortable for you. Or finding stability in the sensations of your body on whatever is holding you right now, be it a chair or a bed or the floor or the ground. Just rest for a moment as you evoke gratitude for all that you receive along your path, past, present, and future. And then I invite you again to let that consideration fade into the space of the mind and dissolve in your present awareness, to consider a third observation, and that is that genuine happiness, true fulfillment, cannot possibly be realized without some very meaningful inward transformation. That each one of us must grow, and most of all, we must purify the parts of our minds that limit us from realizing the greatest aspirations of our imaginative visioning. So this raises the third question, and that is, how would you love to transform? In order to realize your heart's desire, what qualities that get in the way would you love to be free from? And with what qualities that nurture your growth would you love to be endowed? What elements of who you want to be would you love to cultivate? Recognizing that transformation can be difficult and it can bring up a lot for us. So I invite you to offer yourself kindness and the recognition and desire around, may this too be true. May transformation be possible for me. And may it help me find my own vision of genuine happiness. And if it's possible for you to access the breath and find comfort in that, breath by breath, imagine that such transformation is taking place right here and right now with this practice. So now we come to the fourth and final observation. And so allow previous questions to dissolve again into your present awareness. And begin to reflect that none of us exist in isolation, independently. Our lives, our well-being, everything about us is utterly bound up and interdependent with all those around us. People, history, the land. So honoring this understanding in order to imbue your own life with the greatest possible meaning, satisfaction, and fulfillment, we raise the fourth question, or the fourth set of questions, really, which is, what would I love to offer to the world around me? Drawing from my own unique background, my gifts and my skills, what are the greatest elements of good I can imagine offering to those who are both near and far, over the short term and the long term? Staying true and honoring my deepest potential, my own best nature. What would I love to offer the world? And understanding that offering of ourselves takes deep courage and great vulnerability. And so again, if the breath is an anchor for you, or if you can find an anchor in a sensation that has grounding and stability for you, begin to arouse the aspiration. May it be so. Imagine offering your very best, transforming everything around you into the good you would love to offer the world. And imagine your offering being received and appreciated. So in the few moments we have left in our practice together, when it feels right to you, I invite you to slowly release all appearances and all aspirations and all objects of the mind. And for a short time, just gently rest your awareness in its own nature and in the awareness of simply being aware. And in your own time, return to your present state of awareness, normal state of awareness, and close your practice. Thank you all.
That was really beautiful. I appreciated the experience. Um, I echo the comment that was outstanding. One of the things as a team we thought was also important to elevate is the recognition that as people of color, being vulnerable, our vulnerabilities as individuals and as collectives are often not only used against us, but systematically used against us, used to justify and excuse oppression and criminalization and torture in various forms. So we wanted to just recognize that any practice that involves our vulnerability is um, possibly dangerous. And we may have conditioned ourselves to kind of constantly remember that, to be on alert. And so exploring our vulnerabilities and what we need and or want from the world, it's a unique situation for people of color, and it can be painful, and we can start to explore the multiple aspects in that vulnerability may contain an openness to injury, but it may also contain and or produce strength. So we just wanted to offer that balance so that we are acknowledging that this practice is revolutionary in that sense, that we are willing to explore and encouraging, inviting all of you to explore today, but also after today, explore our vulnerabilities um, in the face of that. I remember, I probably won't get the quote right, but there's a quote that I love that basically says, because we live in the systems of oppression that we live under, love, true Black love is revolutionary. And I refer to that often because it lets me kind of indulge in not just love, but I thought of it. I came across it when thinking about my daughter and that kind of infinite love and that willingness to love her infinitely in the face of oppression, knowing how she may be socially constructed and knowing the physical and mental and spiritual dangers that she might be facing as she grows up, to be willing to love her in the face of that. And that vulnerability is what I think I'm trying to tap into, because even kind of thinking about it, there's a sense of strength that comes up from that. So thank you all for your work on this.
Thank you, Zahra and Christian and everyone on this team and all of you. We're still recording. And once again, my name is Mushim. That's a Korean Zen Buddhist name. Patricia, my dad gave me that name. No one really knows why. He liked it. And my family name is Ikeda, Ikeda. And that reflects my Japanese heritage. All four of my grandparents immigrated to the United States from Japan quite a long time ago. My pronouns are she and her, and I live on occupied land of the Confederated Villages of the Lisjan, Lisjan, Ohlone, Ohlone, here in Oakland, California, in the United States. And once again, there are 53 of us here today in this Zoom meeting on creativity, vulnerability, and power, hosted by the East Bay Meditation Center in Oakland. I've looked in the chat. We're from all over the world, including Canada, Russia, Australia, all over the United States and other countries as well. As Black, Indigenous people of color gathered together for the common cause of movement building, of liberation, and of tapping into and seeing the interconnections, each for ourselves, of creativity, vulnerability, and power. I'm going to talk for a while about creativity, and at 12:40 p.m. Pacific time, we'll have 20 minutes for community dialogue and Q&A on vulnerability and creativity. After lunch, Dr. Zahra Ahmed will talk to us about power and how, of course, all of these qualities for us are co-arising, and we're looking at all of them together with a special emphasis on vulnerability and creativity. I do want to dedicate my talk on creativity to a number of people, and I'm going to screen share so that you can see that an image of one of the people who is right here, Buddhist monk, the most venerable Bhante, Bhante. That's not a personal name, that's an honorific, kind of like reverend, for a monk in, I believe, Thailand or Sri Lanka. And his name is Suhita, Suhita, Dharma, Dharma. He was the first African American to be ordained as a Buddhist monk. And at the time of his death in December 2013, was the most senior Buddhist monk in North America. However, no one knew that because he really liked to fly under the radar. He was vice abbot of a Vietnamese Buddhist temple in the Los Angeles area, and he liked to keep very quiet so as not to be aggravated by people. He had the nature of a hermit in many ways, and he was part of my family for years, basically a godfather to my son, an amazing teacher. And here you see myself and Bhante in 2013, along with, in the middle is Vina Charlie, Vina, who is an educator and psychologist and of the Diné people in Kayenta, Kayenta, Arizona. And we're in New Mexico at 9,000 feet at the Vallecitos, Vallecitos Mountain Refuge outside of Taos, New Mexico, at a 7-day silent retreat for people of color. I want to get back there, folks. Like all retreat centers, the physical plant is closed down now, and I'm part of a team that may be able to put on a virtual retreat for Vallecitos. And there, the land is the teacher. The land is the teacher. So you see part of the wonderful land there. So this is dedicated to my great spiritual friend, Bhante Suhita Dharma. We never had a student-teacher arrangement. He held up the ideal of the spiritual friend, and that is my ideal as well. And that way we don't have weird power trips. And we all feel free to state our needs and to be in right relationship and good relationship to one another. The second person to whom this is dedicated is a non-Buddhist friend of mine who died in July of 2018. And that is my very dear friend, Arthur Mcgee. You can see he has his own chapter in the book, The Black Digital Elite, and he was called the father of the Black Internet. He, as it says, you'll see here in his chapter, it says he was, I think probably maybe the first and most prominent activist to identify a unique African-American cyberspace.
Mushim, I just wanted to let you know, we're still seeing the picture that you're sharing. And so if you're talking about a book or something else we should be seeing, we can still only see the picture.
Yes, and thank you. I'll be switching next to that.
Just checking.
Thank you, Shah. So here's the book. You can see I got it used. It used to be a library book. So it's a bit of a rare book called The Black Digital Elite, African-American Leaders of the Information Revolution. And once again, this will bring forth part of our Black history and African-American history that may be very little known, of the debt that we owe for this Zoom that we're on and the internet that services that we're using, if we have the privilege to access them, of the contributions to what we call IT, internet technology, and the cultures that have been able to be formed within cyberspace for, in this case, Black identified people, opening the way for all people of color, including Indigenous people.
Excuse me, Mushim, you might need to stop your share of the one photo before we go on, unless are we supposed to still be seeing the photo?
I'm only seeing the photo of the cover of the book. Are you seeing more than that?
We're still seeing the first photo, and I think sometimes you have to stop share and then start share with the new image on your screen.
Okay. So let me just try that. So are you seeing the book now, Shah?
Yes, we can all.
Okay. Thank you. I'm learning as I go. I'll now stop that share and give you a few more thoughts in the time that we have. So as was mentioned in the description of this event, I am a former Buddhist monastic. I was a Buddhist nun, and I spent some formative years of my life as a Buddhist and meditation practitioner, practicing under a vow of complete poverty and renunciation in North America. I practiced in Mexico, and also in my spiritual lineage homeland, which is South Korea. And that was in the early 80s. With the birth of my son in 1989, I began a slow return to lay life. We are all creative people, and we are the results of creation. We are all creative people, and we are the results of creative acts. Our ancestors were generative. We are generative. Our descendants, or what some people call our ascendants, those who will rise past and beyond us, ASCENDANTS, are also generative. Therefore, when we speak of creativity in the spiritual sense, there's no need to get hung up on considerations or identities of who is an artist and who isn't. I come from a background. I have a degree in the fine arts, a master's degree in the fine arts in poetry and creative writing. And I know that that can become a barrier for people when they begin to worry about status and so forth. So let me just affirm for you once again that we are all generative and we are all creative. And it is through the vulnerability of creativity. In order to be creative, we need to make ourselves vulnerable. We need to make ourselves vulnerable to ourselves, to parts of ourselves that we may be reluctant to look at, to the areas of our own pain and the pain of our people, our communities, in ways that are safe enough. So I want to emphasize safe enough. This requires bold compassion. This requires courage, and this requires support from the healers in our communities and people that we can connect to, who can be our spiritual guides, can be our healing guides, in order to, once again, for this journey to be safe enough. When we're vulnerable, when we're creative, by definition, there are going to be parts of our journeys that are unsafe, that are dangerous, because that's what it means to go into unexplored territory, to see what can be created that has not been created before for the benefit of our families, our communities, and for all of the non-human beings in the environment upon whom our very lives depend. So there can never be any guarantee that this is going to be some boring same old, because that is counter to the nature of creativity and vulnerability. And it is through these acts of courage, accompanied by our guides, by our healers, by ourselves, by the practices such as the one that our teacher Christian Howard has led us in, that we begin to tap into our power. So creativity doesn't play it safe and color inside the lines by definition. It honors mistakes. It honors mistakes. It elevates imperfection. And it recognizes that we are here to learn. So this is a journey that takes both courage and humor, and both courage and humor can open us up to the unknown and the unexamined, to bring us home to the brilliance and the magnificence in our total bodies and minds as Black, Indigenous people of color. And as I've heard from one of my colleagues, artist colleagues in Canada, who said that a term being used in Canada is now IBPOC, IBPOC, Indigenous Black people of color. So we see here again a generative and creative act, language always changing, always opening us up to new forms of consciousness, to new ways of centering, moving to the front, moving to the back, seeing what's in our peripheral vision in order to understand more deeply that which has been not understood, in order to see more clearly that which has been invisible, in order to hear in all senses of the word, whether we're hearing people or not, the cries and the voices of those who have been silenced. Creativity, humor, courage, vulnerability open us up. It creates openness, it creates space. In the words of the great Buddhist teacher, Shantideva, who lived a long time ago in India, Shantideva, Shantideva said, just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the many beings. So we might ask ourselves, how can we support the life of all the many beings to create true beloved community? Shantideva also goes on to say, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. So I'd just like to ask you to take a moment of mindfulness and try to tap into, in any way that works for you, your intrinsic creativity, your ability to generate new ways of thinking, new ways of being, new ways of telling our stories, new ways of living on this earth in order to be the source of life for all the many beings. Just try it on. Just try it on. And when you consider these words, what images come to your mind? What sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations? What whole body associations? So again, safely, I'd like to invite you just open up and free associate, trusting the poetry of your existence to make unexpected connections, and are touching into what we call deep time. What comes to your mind, what comes to your body when you hear the word creativity? What comes to you when you hear or see the words wise vulnerability? Knowing you are a unique and powerful human being, what comes to you that you can bring back to us when you hear or see the word power? I'd like to invite you to consider this. Creativity is the same thing as generativity. Generating energy, generating ideas, generating organizational structures, generating art, generating music, creating. So creativity is generativity. Generativity is life. And life is movement. How can we create movements that are harmonious, transformative towards our goals? What are our goals as Black, Indigenous people of color? And there is no one answer to this. Although there may be broad areas of consensus, of coalition, and it is through that that we begin to develop lines of affinity and the movements are continuingly taken forward. Let us honor our unity, let us honor our diversity and our difference, knowing that we can benefit from all of this. And once again, to understand that my invitation is for us to be open to our vulnerable mistakes and our imperfections. And I'll share with you briefly a true story. This is a true story of deep time, of nonlinear time. And that is when my mother's youngest sister died some years ago. This was my Aunt Ella. She was the youngest of all of her siblings, and she was the last to pass. And so my cousin invited me to write part of something for her funeral program. And I wrote, she must have been sad to see her 5 siblings die before her, predecease her. And I went to sleep, and then I woke up the next morning and I thought, well, that was a stupid mistake. And I emailed my cousin and I said, my math is terrible. Ella was one of 5 siblings, meaning she had 4 siblings, brothers and sisters, who preceded her in death. And I will not forget this. This is a cousin I don't know very well. 5 minutes later, I got an email and it said, no, you're right. Ella had 5 siblings, and Grandma and Grandpa's first child died at the age of 2. That is how I learned that I had an aunt. Had never known about this aunt, whose name I still don't know, by the way. So I call her my baby aunt, A-U-N-T, because she died when she was 2 years old. And this is what brought me into communication with my ancestor, baby aunt, was a mistake. So let us be open to everything and to understand what our intentions are. And I'll just end taking a few more minutes by reading again in honor of my friend Arthur Mcgee, the father of the Black internet. He said that's what he was called. And again, we see that generativity. He was called the father of the Black internet. So he didn't have blood children of his own or adoptive children of his own. He was a father of a whole area of cyberspace. Talk about creativity. And in a private conversation in 2012, Arthur Art said to me about the fact that when I met him, he was a manager in a video cassette rental store in my neighborhood. That's how I met him. he always said that I dug him out of the witness protection program. Because before that, he'd been the director of several anti-racism nonprofits and a pretty big deal. He even worked for the Department of Defense. So here's what Art said. However, at some point, he said, during my nonprofit and activist career, I became tired and disillusioned with the tendency of many progressives to practice a reductionist and crudely didactic politics, which often seemed bereft of any of the inspiration that makes regular folks keep fighting for freedom. Art said, I know that I personally, as a Black person, do not get up in the morning because of some empirical data analysis in a report that I read. I get up because Martin Luther King and Malcolm X risked their lives and faced death so that we could have a better life. I get up because Fannie Lou Hamer, despite being sick and tired of being sick and tired, kept on going. I get up because Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of an independent Ghana, taught me that personal liberation is bound up with collective liberation. I get up because Paul Robeson, a Renaissance man and one of the greatest Americans ever, showed me what it means to be pro-Black without being anti anyone else. I get up because my father, and Art always capitalized father, a man who raised me essentially alone since my mother died when I was very young, deserved a better life after working so hard for so many years. I get up because of all the people, Black or otherwise, recognized heroes or not, who have struggled against the intransigence of our own idiocy to expand the definitions of human rights and human dignity. And to honor all of our ancestors, all of our spiritual friends, all of our ascendants and descendants, and everyone who is with us here today in this program, this event, Creativity, Vulnerability, and Power for Black, Indigenous People of Color, on December 19th, 2020. I will invite the bell of mindfulness 3 times, and then we can stop the recording and open this up to your insights and your questions.
The dots, but then also focus more on power for this last part of our day. And so I guess to get started, we wanted to, kind of go back to a couple of the comment. We shared some insights over lunch, Christian and Mushim and I talking about our impressions of just these interconnections between vulnerability and creativity and power. And some of the comments that you all asked or questions you asked before our lunch break, we were saying that we could feel a sense of interconnectivity within those questions. And I know for me, I can't remember who asked the question. I didn't write down your name, but the person who asked, I believe it was Donna, who asked about the withholding from self. One of the things that came to my mind thinking about the connection between vulnerability and creativity was trust. And some of you may have heard the quote. I know Mushim has referenced Adrienne Marie Brown, and I am going to as well. But the quote from her book, we have to move at the speed of trust, and that sounds really all well and good, but even with ourselves, we can trust ourselves to differing degrees. And so it just kind of struck me that for me, that willingness to risk being creative or generative depends on that foundation of trust, the degree to which I feel some sense of confidence and safety and groundedness, not a delusion that everything will always be perfect or everything will always be okay, but more than that, a sense that even if it isn't, it will be. A sense that I am held. And that's something that I'll come back to. I have a great visual that I think I carry with me. And so that was one of the things I wanted to offer, just thinking about our withholding of creativity from ourselves. And it
Zahra,
can be,
Zahra,
yeah.
there's a hand was raised by
Oh,
someone named, I think, Gabriel or Gabrielle Muncy.
okay. Go ahead, Gabrielle. I don't know how to spotlight, but
Oh no,
feel
don't worry.
free.
I'm not on camera. Anyways,
Okay.
thank you. Yes, my name is Gabriele, pronouns he, him. And just to add to this conversation on or this particular thread about vulnerability and creativity and trust has that sort of connection. I also wanted to offer a little pearl of wisdom to everybody that adaptation can also be a form of creativity. And jumping off of what you were saying, Doctor, about trust being that connection, and as Christian was saying earlier about reminding us of the interconnectedness of all beings, if one feels like they cannot trust their own creativity yet, you can always lean upon what someone else created. And I'm also jumping off of Mushim quoting Questlove's practice. Pick up what somebody else started, add your own flavor to it, remove it, tweak it, remix it, and that you are infusing your own creativity into that, and then do that over time, and hopefully that will uh, boost your own self-confidence and, oh yes, I can create something. And so that's all. Bowing out.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gabriele. I think that's so beautiful and very true. And there's so many examples, you know, Questlove's example, and of course in music, I thought of like jazz and the solos, but just everywhere. So I really appreciate that. I think that's really helpful. And so in this moment, we really want to, you know, for the entire day and especially the rest of our time together, we really want to invite us to kind of rest in this, in the truth of who we are, incorporating and including our vulnerabilities, our capacities for creativity, and our understandings of the power that we can create when we acknowledge the interrelationships between all of it. So I want to share my screen. So as mentioned, I am a student of politics. And so one of the books that I like to assign for my students is by an author named Eric Liu. And he has one chapter on the 3 laws of power. And I love these laws because they are short. They are, you know, relatively clear, but there's so much to them and we really spend time with them. So the first law of power is that power concentrates. And that means that nature creates not just, you know, people, not just in hierarchies or unequal system, but across the board, nature tends to create concentrated clusters. And so if we think about examples in the natural world, so while they may start off growing randomly, the plants that get more light, they grow taller. And then as a result of growing taller, they get more light. And so those plants that had it in them to grow taller and get more light become concentrated. And then of course, they perpetuate themselves. So power concentrates. The second law is power justifies itself. And for this law, I think a lot about the stories we tell, justifying both power, whether it's our power or our sense of powerlessness or somewhere in between, and or the power or powerlessness of others. But there are stories that we tell to justify both. And I think that's important because I know for myself, when we were talking about negative self-talk earlier, a lot of that self-talk ends up being a justification for why I can't or shouldn't, or I'm not good enough to do something, to um, to be bold enough to go back to what Christian offered us this morning, to really ask myself, like, what do I need from the world and what do I have to offer, and to abide in that space. We can tell ourselves stories about why we don't deserve, or we're not smart enough, or on the flip side, why we do have what we have because we've worked really hard for it. All of these are stories. And it's not to say some are good or bad or to label, but it's just to understand that we engage in this process. And the outcome is justification of power, one way or the other. The third law, and this is my favorite because law number 3, and Eric Liu writes about this, he says, law number 3 has the power to save us from laws number 1 and number 2. Because we all know that we live within a society that where we experience the negative impacts of concentrated wealth inequality and other forms of power that are used to dominate, and where many times people of color in our communities are blamed as having some kind of deficiency, and that is used to explain why we are often marginalized and criminalized and vilified. So for law number 3, it's a reminder that power is not a zero-sum game, even though the societies that we live in, and I would say not only in the United States, but globally, we can identify societies where power is framed as, well, you either have winners or you have losers. You have those who succeed and you have those who don't. You have those who have and you have those who have not. And so this is a reminder that we have the capacity to generate power. And Liu talks about political power and also economic and social power in the form of organizing. And he reminds us in the book that we may not think we have very much power, but by kind of even taking the small step of looking to our communities, looking to our families, looking to our friend groups, and remembering that we are not alone, and that if we are experiencing a social issue, there are others experiencing that too. And we have the possibility of making common ground with them. That helps us to activate power that we may not have seen or understood before. So these are 3 laws shared by Liu. And kind of based on that offering, I also wanted to share kind of a follow-up. So that that first law of power concentrating itself, going back to Adrienne Marie Brown, our friend, I just love this quote from Emergent Strategy, where she's basically, this example, again, reminds us of how we can learn so much and get so much strength and power from our understandings of nature. And so she says, oak trees don't set an intention to listen to each other better or agree to hold tight to each other when the next storm comes. Under the earth, always they reach for each other. They grow such that their roots are intertwined and create a system of strength that is as resilient on a sunny day as it is in a hurricane. And so I included the image here of the roots, the trees growing together at the roots. And I just thought that this was a beautiful way of remembering and visualizing that's this same law, this idea that we can come together and in our willingness to support each other genuinely, not in a superficial way where we feel we have to put on a pretense of not having vulnerabilities. But when we find community and we are able to practice together, we provide support for each other that can go very deep, deeper than what you might see on the surface. And that support, that strength can allow us to then move forward in a positive direction and strategize in a way that that benefits us all and gives us the energy and helps us to stay motivated to affect social change, which is personally what I'm that's part of my motivation. That's what I'm in this for. And so I have just a couple more offerings, and then I wanted to encourage everyone to I have a brief activity for us. So just thinking about power, we understand that there are many different definitions. There are different ways of talking about, thinking about, and even examples that we might see, that we might say, okay, well, that's an example of power. And I think for each of us, it really is about, even if we're talking about organizing power within our communities, it relies on our ability to see and to feel our personal power. And so that means that our definition or our understanding or our relationship with power has to be personal. And we have to be comfortable in acknowledging this is what power means to me. This is when I feel powerful. When I close my eyes, this is what makes me feel and helps me to remember that I'm bigger than this one body. Another way of thinking about it is a question that I've asked myself is, what raises my vibration? What is it that where I can actually feel elevated? And so we've had a couple of meditations, and so I wanted to invite us to go in a bit of a different direction. And so Christian alluded to our love of music among this teaching team especially. And so I have a musical exploration that I'd like to invite us to practice. And I'll explain it, and I'll also just paste it in the chat, but it's really easy. So the question that we ask ourselves then, music is powerful. Music can activate our entire brain, and it can stay with us in ways that we don't even realize after the music is gone, after the song is gone. It continues to have a hold on us, or it can. And you can think about that on a continuum. It can be beneficial or it can be damaging. And so one of the things that we can think about is, what music have we been listening to, or what music do we listen to, and how does it affect us? Is it benefiting us, or is it hurting us? Does it feel damaging? And so let's just I want us to take about 10 minutes, and I want you to ask yourself first, what's your favorite song or your favorite musical piece? Just one, whatever, whichever one comes to mind. And then I want you to listen to it. And so that's why, it can't be the whole genre, but just find, think about one song that you have access to. And as it bubbles up in you, like, yes, this song resonates with me, take a few minutes and listen to it. Hopefully it won't take you more than 5 minutes to listen to the song. If it's an extended remix version, just listen to it for about 5 minutes. And then when the song is finished, ask yourself, how do you feel after listening to it? And see what associations come up for you regarding power. And when I say that, I mean, is there a sense of energy that you may feel or a lack thereof? Is there a sense of elevation? Or maybe depending on the song and the impact that it has on you, maybe there's kind of a lowering or a, a sadness to it. But I just want us to take a minute to explore, and then we can come back together and incorporate our reflections on that with our larger conversation. So I'm just going to post those questions that I just asked in the chat. But once again, it's really simple. You're just asking yourself, what song am I listening, or what song do I want to listen to? What's one of my favorite songs? And then listen to it. And then how do you feel after listening to it? So it's kind of 3 parts. And I'm going to post it in the chat now. So what is your favorite song? And of course you can mute your computer so that you can like listen and you'll hear it, but we all won't. What is your favorite song and why? Listen to it. And then how do you feel after listening to it? And so there's a question, could we share in the chat the songs we choose? You can feel free to share during our, when we come together, because we'll be doing like sharing, and there'll probably be other questions too. But you can feel free to share, but just know if you don't get to it now, you'll have a chance to do that afterwards. So really spend time, make sure that you get a chance to listen to your song and reflect on it a bit. So it's 2:24. And we will come back. How about we give ourselves 7 minutes? What do you all think? All right, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 2:31. So I'll just start talking again at 2:31. So listen to your music.